Welcome everybody. We're going to do the smudging and the I am here in just a moment, but if you want to take a moment to look at your card if you haven't already, these are the light and shadow cards from Carolyn Miss, and today we're talking about overcoming the hate, and part of that is overcoming our own shadow sides and being able to accept those for the good that they bring to us. So, as if you know anything about the work that I do, I'm always telling people that you interpret your own card for yourself first, and then if you need to refer to the book for more clarification, I've got that also. And that's just a way of taking back your power so that you can ascertain for yourself what the message is specifically for you. And you can look at it, and the first instincts that come to you is probably your most correct instinct or your most correct answer. And if you'd like to share, you're more than welcome to. But I want you to sit with your card for just a few minutes and look at the picture, look at the words, the messages, and just see how it applies to your life. And you guys can have a seat. We're actually going to do today's mantra sitting down. So we have a new person here, and just so you know, every week we do a gathering called the Lodge Service, and we do a mantra in the beginning, and then we do a teaching, and then we're going to have community time or guided meditation, then we're going to do community time and love offering, and then our closing prayer. And today's mantra, I picked the one that Deva Premal recorded. It's a beautiful mantra for healing for ourselves and for the world. And I really feel that this week, all of us, including our world, could use a lot of healing given what happened in Charleston. So the focus for today is going to be about overcoming that hatred that permeates everywhere around us. So much so that somebody is willing to go in and just shoot everybody up, to kill everybody, innocent lives, for the sake of their hatred. So we'll talk more about that later. But so for the Gaia, or for the mantra, it's Om Shree Dhanvantre Namaha. Om Shree, I might be saying Dhanvantre Namaha wrong, but you'll get it. It's 8 minutes long, and the reason it's 8 minutes is that she sings it 108 times, which is a magical number. And probably the best way to get the benefit of this mantra is to really go within yourself and feel that vibration and feel it in your heart, feel that healing, be conscious of sending out that healing and also receiving the healing back into your own heart.
Shri Dhanvantre Namaha. Om 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 Shri Dhanvantre Dhanvantre Namaha. Om Shree 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 Dhanvantre Namaha. Om Shri 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 Dhanvantre Namaha.
The sounds of nature are just as beautiful as the mantra is. You can hear all the different little beings out there. While I was waiting for you guys to come, a bird perched right on the branch outside and looked inside the teepee as if I thought he was gonna fly in and be with us, but he flew away. How many of you are aware of what happened in Charleston this past week? A few of you. So it hits home for Amber and I because we're from Charleston, and it hits home because we're a part of the society that we all live in. And it's easy when things happen far away from us that we can remove ourselves from it. And then when it hits home, when it hits, people that you know and love, and in a neighborhood that you have sat and had coffee and walked and been in that space and maybe even have met these people, it hits a little bit closer. And then when tragedy hits your family or your friends, it hits even closer, and you become more aware of what's going on. But when you remove yourself from what's going on in the world around you, when you have tragedies that happen that aren't directly affecting you, it's easy to just brush it underneath the carpet and say, oh, that's bad, or that's sad, it's too bad, and then go on with your life and go on with your way. And there's a lot of harm in doing that, I believe, in removing ourselves from the things that are happening around us. And as I said last week, we are all a part of every single thing that happens in this world. Whether we have a direct influence or not, we still have some kind of connection to it because we're all in this together. We're all in this world together. And those people who got shot last week are not strangers to us. They're our brothers and sisters. They are a part of our family. The boy who shot them is not a stranger to us. He is our brother. He is somebody that is connected to us in some way. And we all bear that responsibility, and in some ways can't turn our back on these things that happen in our world. Last week I talked about the earthquake in Nepal and how it has been erased from the news. You're hard pressed to find any coverage on it anymore. But our brothers and sisters in Nepal are still struggling. They're still hurting. They're still without water. They're still without food. They're still without their homes. They're still dealing with the tragedy of losing the people that they love the most. These people in Charleston last week will be old news as soon as the novelty or the sensationalism wears down. Charleston will just become Charleston again. But for right now, it's the story that's present in our news. It's something that just happened last week. But these things happen every single day. They happen all over the world every single day. I read an article a couple of weeks ago. This woman who writes this blog, she's a Christian missionary. And she's working over in, I can't remember the country, but she's helping women and their children move away from where the ISIS has come in and terrorized them. They're raping the children, they're raping the women, they're killing them. And so these women have been forced to leave and go live in these storage containers to hide themselves from these terrorists so that their kids can't be taken away from them and used in slavery and for other reasons. And the story had an interesting twist because it was about loving, that phrase that we always hear, love the sinner but hate the sin. You know, we can look at the shooter last week and we can love him and see him as our brother, but we can hate what he does. I've had people tell me personally, I love you because you're, a human being and you're my sister, but I can't accept you being gay. I can't accept you being a lesbian. That just goes against my beliefs. And so when you have something that happens like what happened in Charleston last week, or you have ISIS coming in and stealing these children and raping them and killing them and doing all these horrible things, all these tragedies that happen in the world, it's very easy to separate that from us and say, well, I'm not like that. I don't go out there and shoot people. I don't go out there and rape people. I don't do this, that, or the other. But any time that we have those very subtle judgments about other people or about ourselves, we are doing exactly what they're doing. We're just doing it on a little smaller scale. We're a little quieter about it. But it's still harming the human spirit of those around us. When somebody tells me that they love me, but they don't love my sin, they don't accept me because I happen to love Amber, and in their eyes that is against God's will, that hurts me. It hurts Amber. It hurts everybody because it's a judgment about my life. It's a judgment about that everybody's lives who happen to be different or be gay or be straight. I fall into the same thing. For a long time, I didn't understand how people could be straight. And I had a judgment about it. I had and I have a hard time with white men. I do not like white men. No offense to the white men who are in this room. But that's my own judgment that I had for a very long time. And part of that was because I fell into having white men who thought that they could cure my gayness through trying to rape me or beat me or whatever. telling me that I wasn't worthy, or that I just needed the right man. And so I had that judgment for a long time, and every white man fell into that category. It's like, well, all white men must be like that. Well, all gay people must be like this, or all straight people must be like this. And we all have these subtle little judgments that we have, whether we want to or are willing to admit it or not. And it happens every single day. And that erodes the human spirit. It erodes the love that Jesus spoke about, that Gandhi spoke about, that all these great people in the past, the common message that you hear in almost every single religion is love. Pure and simple. Jesus never preached, love the sinner, hate the sin. He never, ever, ever spoke those words. All he said was, love each other. Love thy neighbor. There's no greater commandment than love thy neighbor. And there were no stipulations on that. There was no love your neighbor if they're white, love your neighbor if they're straight, love your neighbor if they make a lot of money, love your neighbor if. Those were never spoken or uttered by any of the great people who have walked this earth, who have preached love. And yet in some way we have all come together in this human condition, and we label each other. We put each other into these little boxes, and then we determine whether we like those labels or not on that person, or what judgments we might have about that person. Or it's the nonverbal judgments that we make. We're walking down a street and there's a couple of African American men coming. Do you cross the street because you feel unsafe? Do you make a judgment by wanting to not sit next to somebody when you go to a retreat or do a class or something like that? We're always making these subtle little judgments. Somebody comes in and they're dressed provocatively, and this happens a lot when women get raped. Well, how was she dressed? How was she acting? Was she drunk? And we make those judgments about why something may have occurred for her. So in every instance, in every day that we live, there are great, horrible tragedies that are happening in the world around us. And the way that we contribute to that is through these subtle judgments that we make every single day about other people and about ourselves. And the reason I had you pull a shadow card is because many times we project onto other people those parts of ourselves that we're not willing to accept. We project outwards because going inwards is more painful. I have a quote on your thing today. I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with the pain. So instead of dealing with our own pain and our own wounds and our own judgments and our own things that we do to ourselves, we put it all out there. We have those little judgments that go out, even if it's so subtle and they're so clever. And we can sometimes guise it as, well, I'm up here. I have done spiritual work. I am X, Y, and Z. I have walked the path for 20-some years. I have read all of these books. I know that is whatever you want to call it. I call that light polarization, where you put yourself so up here that you forget that you're really human and you're walking down here with everybody else. We have that judgment that comes from us also, where we separate ourselves from the people around us because we think that we're better than them, or we know what they're going through. We have, I know exactly what you need because I've been there. And you haven't. You have never walked in another person's shoes except for your own. And so when we start to go inward and start working on our own wounds and our own shadows and understanding why do I have a judgment against white men? I have long worked on that. I don't hate white men anymore. I realized that it was my own fear. It was my own fear perpetuating that judgment against other people. And you know what happened? Some of my greatest friends are now white men. And it's like you open up that door so that all that love can come in. All that love that I may have never experienced if I had never tended to that wound of mine. I would have, every time we've had many volunteers come through Sacred Soul Center, and we have had many of them be white men and black men and white women and gay and lesbian and bisexual and straight and short and tall and big and thin, and we had had every kind of person come through here from all different kinds of countries with all different kinds of traditions. And the one thing that I have learned in experiencing all these different kinds of people is that we are all human. We are all in this together, and we share the same breath, we share the same air, we share the same space, we share so much that we forget that we're more like each other than we are different. And when you cling to those differences and that's all you see, you put yourself in that same place as the person who shot those people in the church, or as the terrorist who kidnaps and rapes, and where it's just a different level of terrorism when you're in that judgment, when I'm in that judgment. And sometimes what's worse is the indifference. It goes back to what I was just saying earlier, that when we feel so far removed from a situation and it doesn't affect us directly, so that we think that we become indifferent to it. And that indifference kills probably more than hate does. It's the people. I have a friend, I was telling Amber, we had a long conversation about this last night when we were driving home from Asheville, that I have a friend in Utah. She's straight, she's married, she has kids, she's Mormon, she's very devout to her religion, and yet she's out there fighting for my rights more than I am. She is so pro-gay, and all she wants is for the church and society to accept gay people. I have no idea why she fights for my rights more than I do. But here's a woman who has made it her mission that even though it doesn't affect her directly, she is not going to be indifferent to the injustices that happen to people all over the world. And that touches me because that's actually affecting me directly. Here goes my coffee. At least I'm not sung in the eye by a beat this week. Sorry. And the indifference comes when I've heard this too, and I relate this to my being gay because it's personal to me and I can speak to that. I don't know what it's like to be African American in this society. I don't know what it's like to be Jewish in this society, or a Christian. There's a lot of boxes that I don't fit into, and I don't understand. I can't relate to what those judgments against them might feel like, but I know what it feels like to be judged by the person that I love. And so I can speak to that, well, we've come a long way. You should be happy. You should be X, Y, and Z. It shouldn't matter if you can get married or not get married. I hear all of that. But the truth is that if something happened to me physically and I was in an ICU room, the person who I am sharing my life with can't come sit by my side. And straight people forget that. They take it for granted because that's just a right given to them. If something were to happen to my partner And we have built this business together and created this beautiful home. And if we had kids that weren't biologically mine, in her absence or death, I would lose all of it. Because I don't have a contract that says this is a binding contract. And so some of those little subtle things that we do is when we say, it's okay. You should be happy. At least you have X, Y, and Z. And yet there's that judgment. There's that subtle judgment that I'm talking about, where we judge somebody based on their sexual orientation or their color of their skin or their religion or their gender or their choices, and we hold back certain freedoms because of those little labels. And that erodes the human spirit. It erodes it just like that. And all this is just a body bag. We have been given a body bag to borrow while we're in this human incarnation. And we abuse each other, we abuse ourselves, and we, on some level, struggle with that hatred that we have towards each other and towards ourselves. And that hatred is so subtle. Those are the ones you have to watch out for. And your weekly soul seed is for you to look at and observe, and not judge, but just observe how you have those subtle judgments about yourself, about other people. And when you can start to pick apart and learn and see and observe and become aware, then you can make those changes. You can make the choice to not do an addendum. Love the sin or hate the sin. You can take off that hate the sin thing and just love. Love. That's all you have to do, is just love. Love yourself, love each other, love this earth, love everything that comes in your presence, whether it is a shadow side or a light side. In shamanic terms, the shadow and the dark, there is no difference. You are good and worthy, and you are shadow and dark. And that's all good. Because the shadow is when we learn. It's when we grow. It's when we have those pieces given to us that we can say, okay, this is a shadow part of myself that I can really work with. And there's some meat in this. I can grow from this. This is like a big hunkin' seed that I can plant in the ground and grow something really amazing out of it. Or I can use the shadow side, and it can be the sinister side of me that I ignore, but it does those subtle things that kind of erodes my spirit and the spirit of the people around me. And you have that choice. And a lot of times we don't like to look at our dark sides because we think, oh, that's just, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that part of myself. I don't want to see that part of you. I don't want to see the part of me that hates something. I don't want to be in that anger. I don't want to be in that fear. But that's where the meat of life is. You can't learn the most precious gifts that life has if you haven't had the polar extreme. You don't know love unless you have hate. You don't know anger unless you have joy. They're barometers for one another. But when one controls you more than the other, then you've got a problem. Then you've got an imbalance in your life. And then you start projecting outwards how, if you're not going to accept it for yourself, then you put it all out there. I have this huge judgment about myself, so I'm going to judge you. I have this huge anger towards myself, so I'm going to be angry towards you, because then I don't have to look at it. I don't have to be in it. I can blame somebody else. Blame is a really powerful thing. We want to blame the shooter last week. We want to blame Dylan Roof for killing 9 innocent people. But we have perpetuated what Dylan is. We have created these injustices in our society that has given him kind of a fertile ground to grow that anger and that hatred towards other people, and we fostered it in some way. We as a whole humanity, we fostered that. We created that. He was 21 years old. And I say was because he basically, when he went in there and shot everybody up and killed them, he signed his own death sentence in doing that. He has no chance, most likely, of having a normal life, of growing into an adult, of having children, of finding love, growing old with somebody. He has lost that chance. He has created this situation where his hatred has literally killed him. And whether it is at the hands of the state who executes him, or it's at the hands of angry people in prison who will kill him, or at the hands of himself because he can't live with the choice that he made and he kills himself, or he lives in that hollow place where the hatred has eaten him alive. It doesn't matter how he dies. He's already been given that death sentence by the actions that he took. And the sad thing is that once that happens, there will probably be a lot of applauding. People all around will be, oh, good, I'm so glad he's gone. He deserved that. Nobody deserves to die. Those 9 people didn't deserve to die. At 21 years old, how do you know what love really is if you have never been able to foster it in your life? He probably grew up in a family that fostered that hatred. And that's how we keep perpetuating that hatred, in our subtle ways and in our obvious ways. And as a humanity, as a human spirit, the best thing that we can do is work on our own subtle hatred towards ourselves and towards each other. Heal our own wounds. And in that, we start creating this ripple effect. The people around us start judging less because they see us standing in a space of love. Not better, not worse. We are all equal. We are all in this together. We are all trying to do our best in this human experience. We are all striving to have a place to call home. And it's not a physical place. It's a place here in the heart where, and I think this is what Jesus was talking about when he talked a lot about loving thy neighbor and loving thyself and, finding joy and finding God. God is that universal spirit energy that we all have tapped into, that's where home is. Home is in that love. Home is in that space of being able to breathe with somebody and know that you're sharing the same air. Really sharing the same air. The air we're breathing right now is the same air that Jesus breathed, is the same air that Gandhi breathed, it's the same air that Dylan Roof breathed. And yet we want to separate ourselves from that. We want to say, I could never do something like that. I don't hate like that. I don't have that. That's not me. And put him into a prison, kill him, and do all of these things. We have all these judgments. And then we don't look at our own demons and our own hatreds, our own judgments. When you become one way or the other, when you are light polarized or shadow polarized, Dylan was obviously shadow polarized. I've seen a lot of people become light polarized who have the same amount of judgment. I am better than you because I have walked this path. I am better than you because I have read all these books. I have studied Buddhism. I have studied Christianity. I have studied Judaism. I have studied Hinduism. I have studied Native American spirituality, and I know. That is just as much of a judgment as I don't like you because you're black, or because you're gay, or because you're Jewish, or because you're a boy. It's all judgment. Doesn't matter whether it's light or shadow. It's just a judgment. God doesn't see any difference in that. He sees that as just, it's pure hate. It's pure hate to tell somebody you'll love them, but you're going to hate what they do. That's still a judgment. And when you can come into the middle And you can say, I recognize my shadow parts, and I have this light that I can work on, or I can access, and I can use both sides, and I can come into this place, and I can understand and have the empathy that we talked about last week, and I can also take this love that I take from spirit, and I can bring it together, and I can marry it, and I can do this, and in that place I can accept every single one of you, and I can accept myself, and I don't have to have a judgment. I don't care, or maybe that's not the right word. You care enough that you allow somebody to have their own experience without having to interfere with it. You love them enough that you are willing to admit your own shortcomings and be okay with it. It doesn't make you bad or less. It doesn't make me a horrible person that I had these judgments about other people. It makes me a horrible person if I hold on to those judgments and keep them and let those foster an angry hatred inside of myself. If I use those judgments as a seed that's going to grow something that's not desirable. So you take this seed and you decide what it is that you want to grow. If you want to grow love, then you have to water it with both sides. If you want to grow a really beautiful unconditional love, it needs both shadow and light. You can't stand up here and you can't be down here. It has to come in the middle. When we work with the chakra system, those lower chakras, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, those are ego. Those are all steeped in the physical body, the third dimension. And then your crown chakra, your third eye, and your throat chakra, those are in the light. They're connected to spirit, and they're more of your spiritual body. But none of those can work if they don't come into the heart. The heart is the center of it all. The heart is where everything comes through and is evolved out of in a healthy place. We have another visitor. We love the animals. They always teach us. What is it, a cricket? Mm-hmm. We'll have to look cricket up.
Or is it a baby grasshopper?
Grasshopper. So I want to do a meditation today. Well, before I do that, this card that I pulled earlier that is for what I felt like would be the group. And when I say group, it's not just, those of you who are here, but it's the group called humanity. That's all of us. And the light is, it enhances unity through sharing of information and engenders social awareness and empathy. And the shadow conveys information only for personal gain, spreads fear and falsehood. And right now, if you look at our news, it's definitely in the shadow. The news, the media, it conveys the information that is for the personal gain of that, perpetuating that fear. It spreads fear and falsehood. We don't know the truth about anything that's in the news. And yet, removing yourself from the news removes you from what's actually happening in the world. I had a couple of clients, and here's where I'm going to make a judgment. This is how subtle judgments can be. I was going to say, I had a couple of clients who were Jewish. Why do I have to put that label on them? I don't have to put that label on them. It's not important for you to know that they were Jewish. That's how subtle judgments are. And none of us are immune from it. But I had these two clients in Arizona, and they were very, very, very devout to their beliefs. And they read the news probably every hour. And they knew everything that was going on in the world. And they were fascinating for me to listen to, because they had all this information of things that were going on and things like that. And I said something, because at that time, I never watched the news. I didn't, news is pretty much false anyway. But I never really subscribed to that whole fear-mongering kind of thing. And she said to me, how can you possibly know the pains of other people if you remove yourself from what's actually happening, not just in your corner of the world, but in the entire world, because this entire world is a part of our family. And what she said really struck me. I was like, yeah, it's interesting, because I have never looked at it that way, because I don't feel like what's happening to a family in Turkey or Istanbul or Greece or Israel or Iraq has any relevance to me, because I don't understand that. It's not my culture. I live in America. And that's where I separated myself. In that moment, I separated myself from humanity and said, I'm not like them. But I am. I'm just like them. And I'll end with this. One of the pieces that I recall from that article I read about the woman who was working with the women in ISIS is that, you know, as I was reading the article, I was thinking, okay, here are these women and these children who are, you know, living in a storage, you know, one of the storage containers, the shipping container, hiding from these terrorists. And in my mind, I had this image of they're in a war-torn area, and, you know, buildings are probably crumbling down. They probably had a dirt floor for a, you know, this is all the images that were going through my head as I'm reading this article. But when I get to the end, she describes how these women's lives were before they got to the shipping container. And some of them, one woman was a librarian, and they had a home, and they had a family, and her husband went to work, she went to work, kids went to school. You know, it's just like a family here in America. And then these terrorists come in, and these women missionaries were helping to the terrorists came in and killed the men, and they were starting to kidnap and take the children. And so the women were fleeing. But there's only so much room. And some women had to make a choice of which child they left behind, because there was only room for them and one or two of their kids. But if they had 3 kids or 4 kids or 5 kids, they had to choose which of those children would be most worthy to live or to be saved, and the other 3 or the other 2 or the other 1 was left behind. And that really struck me, because here are these women and these families who are living their life much like we do, and then all of a sudden life changes in a moment, and they're being torn out of their lives, and then having to choose who is worthy and who isn't. And we're not any different than that. Amber grew up in Charleston. I lived there for 7-8 years, and, you know, before here, that was where I called home. And in an instant, someone came in and took away 9 lives, changed the course of 9 families and friends, and the ripple effect in that city. And all of our friends are a part of that. We're a part of that. But you are a part of that as well. Everybody is a part of that. Even if you're not from Charleston, even if you're from Ecuador and you have no connection to that, you're still a part of it. It's present in each of us. And so I just encourage all of you to take whatever you want to from this teaching today, and examine your lives. Examine where you can do things differently or do things better. Judge a little less, love a little more. And really take that seed and nurture it and grow it into something beautiful. And if you want to do that symbolically, go to a store, buy some flower seeds, and decide what kind of dirt you're going to use to foster that seed. What kind of attention are you going to give to it? What kind of water are you going to give to it? How are you going to speak to that plant to make it grow even more beautiful? What are you going to do to grow the most beautiful flower that you possibly can? And then do that. And then take that lesson and apply it to your everyday life. And do it every single day. In every moment you're making a choice whether to judge or love. So just become really aware of what choices you're making. So the meditation that we're going to do is actually kind of a request from Amber because she wants to go to the Akashic records. But what I'd like to do, are all of you familiar with the Akashic records?
No.
Okay. So the Akashic records is similar to what I used to always call the soul book. And it's that information that is accessible to you at any time.
Okay.
And I call it soul book because it's most time when I'm working with people, they actually see a book, and in that are the pages of all the lives you have ever lived, from the very beginning of your incarnation to all of your future lives. Every life you have ever encountered or been a part of, and call that the oversoul, is included in this book. So you can go there and you can learn from your past lives, you can learn from your future lives. And I hate using that terminology because really there is no time continuum. Time doesn't really exist. Everything is happening simultaneously. So everything that you think was in the past, everything that you think will be in the future, is all actually happening right now. Just at different dimensions, different parallel lives, different everything, alternate realities. And so we can go in and we can look at this book and we can see different informations. And what I'd like to do today is actually to go in and see how the shadow, for you to be able to witness the shadow piece and the light piece and see how you can bring it together to get that information. And also when you're in the Akashic records, you can ask for help. You can ask for the presence of Jesus or Gandhi or anybody, Einstein, Van Gogh. If you're working on art, you might want to go in and tap into the energy of some of the great artists. If you're working on quantum physics, you might want to go in and talk to Einstein. You can literally talk to just about anybody. I think since we've been talking about Jesus so much today, that I may bring that into it because Jesus was a great messenger of love. That was his greatest teaching. That was the basis of all of his teachings, was love. And here's another one of those subtle judgments that we can have, especially since we're all together in a Druidry, Native American lodge service, that sometimes when you separate yourself from organized religion, you separate yourself from anything that has to do with that, and that includes Jesus or God, the word God. You know, I always see, and I even say it in our stuff, that spirit, God, universal energy, however you want to phrase it for yourself, because people have such a judgment about what God represents or what Jesus represents because it's so immersed in the Christian organized religion. And when you separate yourself from organized religion, some people tend to have that judgment about it. And I'm even conscious of that in my own wording. So that's just another one of those subtle judgments that we fall into sometimes. So go ahead and take in some deep breaths and just bring yourself present. Get yourself comfortable too. And there are different ways to go into the Akashic records, and there's no right way or wrong way. There's just a different way. And focus on your breath, being really aware of the air that you breathe in. And as you exhale, that energy that you are putting out into the world. And be conscious of the air that you're breathing in, of all the people who have shared that same oxygen. your ancestors, your family, your friends, all the great people who have walked this earth before us, and all those that we have judged to be bad or terrorist. We have all shared the air with all of these people. And allow yourself to just, without judgment, look closely at your life and how you have used the labels or the judgments or the opinions. You can see how that reflects into your own life. How have you been, or how you are, those things that you judge about other people or feel indifferent to? And just bring these awarenesses with you as we go through this meditation, this journey. I want you to imagine yourself now walking through this field on a very narrow, secluded path. See the beauty all around you. Feel the sunlight on your face. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Feel the wind as it blows past you. And ahead you see this beautiful crystal blue pool of water. It's so clear that you can see all the way to the bottom. And the water feels so inviting that you step into it, immersing yourself into this beautiful liquid. And feel it as it cleanses you, washes away the dirt, both literal and figuratively, as it envelopes you and keeps you safe. And dipping your head back and immersing yourself completely into this water, allowing it to cleanse your thoughts, your mind, your heart, your speech, your eyes, your heart. And again, cleansing your heart. And coming out of this water and continuing back onto this path. You come to a bridge with a gatekeeper, an old wise sage, long flowing robes and hair, carrying a staff. And take a moment to connect with him at this heart level. And ask him from this space permission to enter into this upper world to view your soul book. And as he grants you permission, you cross over the bridge and continue on this path. It seems to be leading up and up and up. And ahead you see this beautiful crystal building, almost like a castle or a palace. Big stone pillars. Iridescent, luminous. And you enter into this hall of records. And following down a corridor into this room that is lined from floor to ceiling of just books everywhere. These are all the soul books of everybody who's ever lived. And in the middle of this room is a podium, a table, and on it is your soul book. This is the book that has every moment recorded of your incarnation, from the very beginning of your soul's time to the very end. And I want you to open up this book to the page that's going to show you your light and your shadow. It may be a picture, it might be words. Most likely it's going to be a picture where you see these two parts of yourself, the light and the dark. And I want you to enter into this picture, into this scene, standing between the two of them. And ask each part of yourself, what are you here to teach me? What gift do you bring to me? I want you to bring these two parts of yourself into your heart chakra. Being able to take the gifts that each of these parts of yourself offer you, to grow from them, to learn. And as you stand there with these integrated pieces in your heart chakra, I want you to call in the energy of Jesus. And as you feel that presence coming forward, I want you to ask him, how can I love better? How can I love more? And without any judgment whatsoever, he simply shines the awareness, illuminates what you need to know. And bringing those pieces of your life back into your awareness. Allow his energy to show you how you can be better, how you can love more. In those subtle little areas. And when you feel like you've gotten the information that you need, I want you to gently close your soul book. And thank the energies of the Akashic records of your soul's incarnation. Be in gratitude for the energy of Jesus, that energy of love. And coming back down the hall and out of this beautiful building, bringing with you the information and the gifts of both your shadow and your light side. And coming back down the path. And across the bridge, and give a gratitude to the gatekeeper who keeps this area safe for you. And back through the field, the narrow path. And again, feeling the sun on your face. Bringing in all the elements. Passing the water, the air, the earth. And coming back into this space. Into this time. Feeling a little more connected, a little more aware. And I want you to again look at the card that you picked up earlier and see if it has any different meaning to you. And as with any of these journeys or teachings later today, you may want to take some time to write down any images or messages you got during your journey. Send some healing energy to my lungs, if you will. And just become aware this week of how you can be better, how you can love more.